Electronic Specifier.
Welcome to Electronic Specifier Insights, the podcast for electronics engineers. I'm your host, Paige West. In today's episode, I speak with Gianni Cuozzo, founder and CEO of Exein, about the speed at which China is rolling out their electric vehicles in Europe and the ultimate geopolitical and security risks they pose. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started.
Electronic Specifier.
Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Gianni Cuozzo, who is the founder and CEO of Exein. So thank you very much for joining us, Gianni. And how are you today? Are you well?
So first of all, thank you. Yeah, I'm very good. Great room here. The weather's fine, kind of. We had better days, but today is also fine. So yeah, I can think that I'm pretty good. Thank you. And you?
Yes, very well, thank you. I'm not going to complain about the weather. As someone who lives in the UK, it's just constantly miserable.
Yeah. I can understand.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the speed at which China is rolling out their electric vehicles in Europe. But before we do that, Gianni, why don't you just introduce yourself for us and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'm Gianni Cuozzo. I'm the CEO and founder of Exein. Before Exein, I had another company focusing more on penetration testing of critical infrastructure and the live plant in production. So production plant that cannot be shut down for various reasons, which can be, massive open or financial institution that they cannot hold their systems. So we were performing penetration testing on live systems. Even before that, I worked for 7 years in the government agencies, more on intelligence, cyber intelligence department, reverse engineering systems to understand if some European or Western company were avoiding embargo towards banned countries such as Iran and North Korea and the other country that was under embargo, in order to understand if there were components that were used as dual user systems. And I started my journey in cybersecurity in Germany, next to a CCC capital in Darmstadt in Germany. So now it's been 20 years that I'm in this space. So I'm starting to feel a little bit old. But, hopefully with the old or with my age will come also some additional wisdom. But yeah, of course, for me, I'm a very lucky guy because I do a job that I like. And, I think this is, I was very lucky towards my whole career because every job I had, I really like what I'm doing. And so it was really a gift from the destiny to be here and doing what I'm doing currently.
Okay, and tell us about Exein as a company then. As the founder, where did the idea come from and what's the overall company's mission?
Yeah, the idea comes on my previous experience, both experiences. So both on the consultancy company that I run and also on the intelligence work that I did before, in which at the end of the day, we were performing cyber penetration testing and analysis and vulnerability assessment. But, what at the end of the day, the problem was every time the same, that the device itself that we were targeted had no or little security inside. So, and when we start investigating why it was like that, we started to realize that there was not a general framework to embed embedded cybersecurity, but most of the embedded cybersecurity was like a manual work that people were doing. And so there was a lack of a global cybersecurity framework and a seamless integration of these technologies. And that's why we founded Exein. Exein is an embedded cybersecurity framework that have a runtime agent that runs directly inside. So embedded in the system, we target the Linux embedded systems, real-time operating systems, bare metal, and MCU-based systems. We are right now the largest company in terms of installation. We were born as an open source project, and then we starting having enterprise services on this open source project. We recently announced a partnership with MediaTek, and so now every MediaTek BSP will come with Exein pre-installed inside. We aim to expand this partnership with the new chipset vendors. We are also the only Yocto security standard layer and reference for security. So we are also working very, very closely with the Yocto project and all things related to Yocto. We have an offices in Rome, Karlsruhe in Germany, San Francisco, and Taipei. So we already have pretty much a global presence around.
Brilliant. So given your experience in the security industry then, I'd love to talk about electric vehicles and specifically China's rapid expansion into the EV market in Europe and the ultimate geopolitical and security risks that might pose. So firstly then, what do you see as the main risk, whether that's economic, geopolitical or technological, associated with this trend?
So I think there's just not one risk. There's a compounding effect of multiple risks. So the first and foremost is the economical one, of course, because I come from Italy, so a country with a very long tradition of very high expensive cars, but also company like Fiat used to build, and Lancia and others used to build normal cars for everyday usage. And this sector might be potentially endangered because the problem with those Chinese cars is that the company that are producing those cars are heavily subsidized. They don't have to follow the same regulation when we produce the cars as the European manufacturers. And the real problem is also that Europe leadership is conducting a self-pain and self-inflicting pain on having a more and more restrictive standards, especially on the CO2 brokerage unit. So basically, we are now in the position in which European car manufacturers buy carbon credit from Chinese AV manufacturers, and those Chinese AV manufacturers use those carbon credits money plus the subsidize of the Chinese in order to lower the entry of their market so they can penetrate the market even more. So, of course, this was an absolutely really, really bad strategy from the European Commission. One of the worst country to execute this was Germany, because Germany thought that China will be forever a client and a customer. So they opposed any restriction on their AV market until we get to this situation where right now even Chinese doesn't buy a German cars anymore, even if those German cars are built in China. But we are constantly being this carbon credit market in which we constantly have to buy carbon credit by those Chinese manufacturers. So I don't know if this was a lobbying effect, if this was pure incompetence, or this was ideology. I don't know. What I know is that this was a very stupid decision. And the third problem in terms of security is that those cars come with a lot of sensors and a lot of cameras. Okay. And which means that basically we will be flooded by moving cameras of Chinese manufacturers here in Europe, and with a lot of sensors that can map and track a lot of data. Those data will be collected and will be analyzed not only in Europe, but also in mainland China. Very few people are talking about this, mostly because I think the European Commission cannot talk that much louder. Otherwise, they had to admit the failure of the entire strategy. And still, the problem is resilient in Germany. Germany still, has this disillusional. And I'm a quarter German, so I can speak bad about Germany because I'm also a little bit German. So, you know, I was born in Darmstadt, which is 25 kilometers from Frankfurt. The problem with Germany politician and the Germany economy right now is that they are very disillusioned that they can suddenly go back to the previous world before COVID world, in which was China was a big commercial partner and was, a way to export inflation and a way to have an access to the market. This will not happen. And therefore, all the things that we build here is basically going against us. And this was a disaster frankly speaking. And also, to be honest, there is also a problem in the European car manufacturers because they didn't reinvent themselves very quickly. They had to wait because they want to be sure they are absolutely risk adverse. Risk aversion is one of the key competition problem in Europe all around. It's not only about car manufacture, but since car manufacture is a big market, you can see this approach hitting even harder in this market because, of course, it's a big market. But you know, if we think a company like Mercedes or a company like Audi or Volkswagen Group in general, they struggle to build a reliant software. They struggle to invent themselves, and now they have to run in order to keep up with the competition of Tesla or any others. So at least this was the perfect storm, helped by our politician, but this will be very painful for everybody here.
So what kind of sensitive data is at risk from a security breach, and how can this data be exploited?
So first of all, consider it's like having a moving CCC all around. It's like constantly having sentinels moving and collecting data. Second, other important data is georeference data on sensors that can track with LiDAR and radars, can track all the single buildings that we have, everything. Basically, we are mapping commercial units, commercial data, everything that can be extracted by a car, because car nowadays are basically smartphones with wheels, and which smartphone has a lot of sensors that can collect data. Cars are pretty much similar to this. And we didn't think about it. We just think about how to regulate this and that. But the reality is that this strategy is not paying off. And we will face a geopolitical risk that it's very, very high stake. And I'm pretty amazed by how some of countries in Europe still doesn't realize this, or they don't want to realize this.
Mm. So how exactly does the Chinese automakers' software ecosystem differ from those that are developed in Europe, and why does that raise some security concern?
So first of all, the Chinese have followed exactly the Tesla approach, which means start from the software first in order to have snappy software, very easy to use, very compelling. Secondly, the second approach that they followed very close to Tesla was to don't rely on OEM, but build everything on their own house. The problem with, for instance, the European software manufacturers that generally wise, if you take a software of a car built in Europe, it will suck. It's laggy. It's not working properly. This for two reasons. First of all, because risk adverse policies and never has put the software at the center of the quality of the car. Secondly, because managers that are building those cars have an age that doesn't make them understand that modern users of this car are the iPhone generation, and they are used to have a very snappy UX, very snappy software reference. It's not like before, in which a car was the pleasure of driving, and you can, you will sense the suspension, and also, of course, those things are important, but European ones completely forgot this. In China, instead, they had the same concept that the US had. So they started with the iPhone concept. And the iPhone should be pleasant to use, very elegant interface or very appealing interface, colorful interface, appealing interface. And they build everything on their own, which means that you can have a little by none control of what this software do and what the software actually execute. Security audits are not published. There is no very much culture of security in China, cybersecurity in China. We cannot know if export version differs from internal market version of the software. So it's a very tricky position right now. And the problem is that, please.
No, I was just going to say, given what you've just said, do you think that European regulators and governments fully understand the risks posed by these Chinese EV vehicles?
I don't know. I don't think so, because they don't want to act because they are afraid of the reaction of Chinese authorities. And I'm sorry to say, it looks like that I'm against Germany, but I have to say it. The biggest force, it's Germany, because Germany, it really fears Chinese tariffs or Chinese trade war because of the exposure that Germany itself has with the Chinese market. They know that the US market, especially with Trump, will be close to them. They know that the European market is very depressed because the austerity program that we run for 15 years has done basically only damages. Europe was the continent that has grown the least in the last 20 years. So it's not only peripheral country problem, it's main European problem. Europe has lost every single major trend, major shifting in the last 20 years. All of them, which I also have to, put some question our leadership, because we know that in Europe there is a Franco-German leadership that it's not working anymore, because both Germany and both France are country with no stability, no accountable countries, because everybody is on their own, and the central power in Europe is shifting towards either the east or the south. We have now an Italy that is better stable and better economical, in a better economical shape than Germany and France combined. We have a Poland that is a rising star in its structuring. But still, most of the real political power and bureaucrats are still German centric. And of course, giving their German centric, they really will not do very much against Chinese AV, because the reaction of the Chinese government will be most probably to impose tariffs on European export, and the biggest European exporter is Germany, and this will be hurting their weak economy very much. And frankly speaking, a weak Germany is a very, it's a big problem for everyone in the EU.
Mm. What do you think needs to be done? What would your advice be to European policymakers?
So first of all, to stop the intercontinental carbon trading. If you want to buy carbon, you have to buy carbon from other European companies, because right now we are basically subsidizing their research for them instead of subsidizing our own research. Secondly, starting a massive investment. So if we believe that AV is the way, then we have to invest in AV seriously. Okay. Protectionism, it's a bad word. It was a bad word, but now it's the current. We can see what Trump has done, what China will do. So right now we have to have a protectionist approach to what we are doing.
And what specific cybersecurity measures should automakers implement to protect their connected vehicles?
Well, so first of all, to really control the supply chain. The problem right now is that supply chain is always structured. So there are components that are coming from China still now. There are software components also that are not vetting. We buy firmware with drivers that we don't know where they come from. Most of those OEMs doesn't even control the full supply chain. So a very big impose on the supply chain component analysis would be very important. And also to be as open source as possible. This will give us the transparency and will force all the supply chain to be as transparent as possible.
Is there a way for European automakers to regain control of the software stack to mitigate these external risks, or is dependency on foreign technology inevitable?
I think the problem right now is that we miss a generation of developers, because most of the talent immigrated abroad. This is not only happening in specific country. This is a continental shift. I mean, also in UK. I know that UK is not formally part of Europe, but you know, geographically wise, it is. But the taxation that we impose in Europe actually, especially on this high talent that are high net worth personnel or people that will have pretty big salaries, are pushing everybody to go US. So we are losing talent at the big time. And if we really don't stop this with some credit tax or some tax scheme that actually will make them or either be back or stay here, we will lose another geopolitical shift. Because at the end of the day, software is made by people, and if you don't have the people, you can have all the rules that you want, but somebody has to build the system. You know,
Mm.
yeah, in Italy there is a taxation that can go up to 60%. Yeah, in UK there is taxation that is 45%. This kind of taxation scheme are simply not sustainable. We are thinking that we think that that's normality, but that's not normality. And this is pushing most of our talents to go abroad. Also, car manufacturer, they should totally shift their management, go starting hiring people with different background than only automotive. Because the problem with automotive and that it's a self enclosed circle that people they just hire themselves. All the same people were spinning around from companies. That's just not working anymore. We're living in a very, very challenging technology, challenging market in which you need people from different backgrounds. I really appreciate what Ferrari has done to hire Vigna. Vigna come from a semiconductor by coming from STM. But if you see Vigna is one of the few, the other car CEO, they have only experience in automotive. And the same for head of software, head of engineers. These automotive sectors should start looking around, not only in the car sector.
Yeah, very good point. And do you see AI being used more to enhance automotive cybersecurity and just in the automotive industry in general?
Yes, of course. I mean, AI, it's a big trend that it's pretty much impacting everybody else. We are very far from the big claims of marketing. That's I would say it's a 5% real of the 95% marketing right now. But of course, there is a 5% real. And we cannot deny that this 5% is actually transformational. And the problem with cybersecurity, AI in cybersecurity is that it can be used both sides. It's like a nuclear weapon, or a nuclear reaction. With a nuclear reaction, you can either do electricity or you can do a bomb. It's up to you where you use, but the concept is pretty much the same. So AI is pretty similar. So it can be used both ways. So of course, I'm expecting a better security level because you can auto execute many of the controls that before they were not supposed to be. But also on the other side, there could be some problem related to how many new attacks you can execute thanks to AI. So this is not an easy question because it's not only for good or only for bad skills. I think that the example is exactly a nuclear reaction. You can use a nuclear reaction to do electricity or a bomb. So it really depends on where you want to sit on the table.
So given all you've said then, would you say that you are optimistic that Europe can develop a strong cybersecurity framework for connected vehicles, or are we too far behind?
I think technically I'm very optimistic. Politically wise, no. Because the actual commission is basically copy and paste of the previous commission, which was the one who made the fatal error. And there is no change inside. So even though technically we can do whatever, we can create a framework, we can create cybersecurity countermeasure. But at the end of the day, if there is no political willingness to impose certain standards or certain level of transparency, and you have no the political power to do it, this will be just another technical paper that nobody will read.
So ideally then, in say 5 years' time, where would you like to see the industry?
I will see the industry as a more cautious industry, to stop treating a bill of material just as an addition, a sum of components, but more as a declaration of responsibility. Because if you select a software component, a hardware component, you really need to know why you select it. It's like you are a cook and you are doing a recipe. If you put some ingredients, you have to know where you pick those ingredients and if those ingredients are safe or not. While as by now, we are running this cost cutting range. And of course, cost cutting will expose you to people that are operating on subsidies. Of course, if your bill of materials is built on cost cutting, will mean that countries that can produce cheap, maybe using subsidies, will of course win the bill of material because they will be forever cheaper.
Well, you've certainly raised some interesting points, and I think you've given us all a lot to think about. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up the conversation?
Well, I will add about the talent acquisition phase that is really important. We are losing talent a big time. We are also this remote working. It's on one end, it's a very good thing, but on the other end, it's exposing European talent to American companies and the Chinese companies. And if we cannot defend the talent to work here, because before they had to move, now they cannot move. They can stay here and work abroad. Of course, for the single person is a very nice option, and I'm not blaming them. But for the European system, this will increase the talent, the brain drain, and the talent, the already scarce talent pool that we are building.
Yeah, I've never really thought of it like that before, but that's a very good point. Okay, I think that's it for today, but thank you very much for your time, Gianni. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, especially on this topic. I'm sure our listeners are going to have some food for thought from some of the points you've raised. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Electronic Specifier Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to the series to keep up to date with our newest guests, and do share with fellow colleagues, friends and family who may be interested in the latest news from the electronics industry.
Electronic Specifier.